Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 18, 2007, the gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee of the Minority Leader.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for yielding me time. Tonight, we're going to open something new. If you're like in my house, every 3 months, if you have kids in school, for my house it's Connor and Megan, they just got their report card. And that's what tonight's about, a quarterly report. What has gone on in this 110th Congress? Well, tonight we're going to hear from the freshman class of Republicans, and our goal here is to put the people before politics. Much like what we have seen, we want to find solutions. We want to move America in the right direction. We want to tell you, first and foremost, what have gone on here for the last 100 days. Give us a report card. Tell us where we're going. And the most important thing, we want to bring accountability back to America. So tonight we're going to start off, and we got an interesting freshman class. We got people from all walks of life. This is a microcosm of society, just much like America is. So our first speaker is going to be the president of the Republican class. He comes from Idaho. He served in the legislature. From Boise, Idaho, we have Mr. Bill Sally.
Thank you, Congressman McCarthy. And, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to give this report on this first quarter. I think it's very apt for us to let the folks back home know exactly what's going on from a Republican perspective. In the first quarter of the new Congress, the new Democrat majority has made its priorities clear by acting to impose higher taxes, more government spending, and by attacking key aspects of the Idaho way of life. In the last 3 months, the majority has acted to impose the largest tax increase in more than a decade. In fact, within the first month of Congress, this new majority passed H.R. 6, a bill to increase by $7.7 billion over a 10-year period, an increase that will effectively affect the price of gas at the pump and further our addiction on foreign oil. Now, instead of higher taxes and a continued and increasing reliance on foreign oil, my constituents need lower fuel prices. Yet in the first 3 months in Congress, this new majority has done nothing to lower fuel prices, but to the contrary has acted to actually increase the price of gas. In the same 3 months, the new majority has passed a budget that includes almost $400 billion in increased federal spending, a budget that failed to address the explosive growth in entitlement spending that will consume over 60% of the federal budget in 15 years. The Democrat majority is focused in the Natural Resources Committee on what they call the evolving West. Now, those of us who are actually from the West are calling it the war on the West. The majority has had countless hearings primarily to paint an inaccurate picture of the West and its issues. The reform of poor federal land management policy should be their focus in these hearings. We have forests that are overgrown and are a fire hazard to our communities. We lack access to our lands, and we are under constant attack from radical environmentalists. We need better forest management, and the federal government needs to be a better landlord instead of an absentee one. This should be the focus of their agenda in the Natural Resources Committee if they really want to help us in the West. Priorities of this new majority were further illustrated when they mandated the Commander-in-Chief withdraw troops on an unprecedented and arbitrary timeline without any consideration of what is actually happening on the ground. The same new majority conditioned financial support for our troops on funding of unrelated and various pork barrel projects, including $5 million to study tropical fish and $74 million for peanut storage. In a time of runaway deficit spending, something needs to change dramatically. The change the new majority proposed during their first 3 months, however, is to proceed in the wrong direction aimed at debt, deficit, and defeat. We need to balance the budget, and to do so, we must cut federal spending. Congress's ongoing spending habits continue at the expense of our children And we owe it to Americans, and we owe it to our children and our grandchildren to cut spending. That's why I stood with my Republican colleagues and supported an alternative budget plan to balance this federal budget by 2012 in just 5 years. Together with balanced budget, I also joined my colleagues co-sponsoring legislation to make permanent numerous tax cuts, numerous tax credits that affect average American families. The American taxpayer will work through April 30th this year just to pay their share of taxes. Well, change indeed must occur. My priorities for change are these. Spending must be reduced. Tax burden on American families and small businesses must be reduced. Our natural resources in the West must be responsibly managed. The constitutional authority of the President must be respected. Unfortunately, the priorities of the new majority, as evidenced over the last 3 months, are not my priorities. And they are not the priorities that the people of Idaho hold. With that, I would yield back to the good gentleman, Mr. McCarthy. And